of the slaves are actually one human and one Flaston. But they're skilled labor.
You're watching the Spotlight Network, starring Hollywood's newsman, Logan Crawford.
They now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're talking to one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite guests. His name is Dale Chamberlain, and he takes us deep into the far reaches of space in his amazing book, Oasis 4. It is a riveting sci-fi adventure set on a bustling space station at a galactic crossroads. Managed by Phil Ross under the ownership of Stellar Logistics and Freight Corporation, the station is a hub for both legitimate trade and shady dealings. With danger, intrigue, and galaxy-shaping events unfolding around them, Phil and his crew must navigate crises that ripple far beyond their orbital home. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Good River Print and Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Dale, thank you so much for joining us here on Spotlight.
I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you on the show once again, my friend. Let's start at the beginning, the inspiration to create the world of Oasis 4.
It was really something that just kind of snowballed from a short story. You read the book, and it's just, it's a series of short stories and novellas. And I wrote the first one. I liked it so well, I said, I think I'll write another one with these same characters. And then, some of these things need resolution. So the stories got more involved, and like I said, it took on a world of its own, or became a world of its own, and took on its own life. And I thought I tied it off nicely with the end of the book, but now I find myself writing another book in the same world, but but not. Phil Ross makes an appearance. And some of the characters, they make the two bounty hunters are an important part of the story, but it's I'm trying to get away from the Phil Ross and the space station part of it and just dealing with getting into other parts of this universe I created.
Gotcha. Sounds great. So this is a sequel, but it's not like, it sounds like it'll be a standalone as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. And what areas are you going to explore in this upcoming sequel, and how far are you into the writing of it?
I'm about halfway. I'm kind of in a writer's block. I know where I want the story to go, but I got to flesh out how I want to get there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is I don't want to leave anything out. Of course, with the computer, you can always go back and add. Yeah. So I've rearranged this book a couple of times, in fact. But it's I just got to get back in the mood, I guess, to finish it up. But really, probably the one thing, the two characters, surprise, they're escaped slaves. They actually confront their former masters early on in the book, but it's about. It's mostly an adventure story, but it's about take away forgiveness. The takeaway is forgiving people who have wronged you, and making the best of a bad situation.
Exactly. Now, will this be the same structure as Oasis 4, a series of basically short stories and novellas?
No, it's gonna be a full-on novel. I'm shooting for about 300 pages, and I might overshoot that. I might undershoot it. Because time will tell. I didn't want the first one to be as long as it was. So
sometimes they take on a life of their own, right?
absolutely, yep, you're darn right about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want someone to read and say, well, I need more. Well, patience,
Yeah.
because I've got at least after this one, I've got two more stories I think I can squeeze out of the Oasis 4 universe.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds great. Let's talk about the concept of a space station at a galactic crossroads. How did you come up with that concept?
Probably thinking about truck stops, and I did see an episode on it was a Star Trek episode
Hmm.
where it was Voyager. They stopped at a space station that was on the edge of some uh, stellar phenomenon. I can't recall what it was. I thought, well, that's an intriguing concept, and I thought I'll write a story about that. And then, like I said, it became took on a life of its own.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
that was sort of the inspiration. I'm trying so hard not to copy other
Sure.
genres, Star
But we all
Trek.
kind of stand on each other's shoulders when we're creating
Yeah,
a
they do
little.
it. Jules Verne being the original, I guess, or one of
Yeah,
the originals.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, you can't help but be impacted by Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, all of that stuff out there becomes part of us, you know?
Yeah, and I suppose
Um,
they could just take it as a compliment if they say,
it
"Hey, I
is.
did that," and well, no, that's a
Yeah,
pretty good
it's an
idea.
homage, it's a compliment, and you're not stealing, you're borrowing, and you're changing it and making it your own, and I think it's great. Let's talk about Phil Ross. Is he the right man or the wrong man to manage Oasis 4?
I think he's the right man.
Yeah.
Um, he was never, the way I wrote him, he was never trained as, in management. But
Hmm.
for some reason, he decided to get out of flying and probably to take on a more sedate role in the company. So he thought. But he's a pilot at heart, and that's what he loves to do. But he probably, I didn't delve into this, but he probably thought that that gee heck, it'd be nice to be able to sleep in the same spot every
Hmm.
night. I've worked in the aviation industry all my life, really, and I've worked for freight companies, and these guys, when they're really busy, they're hardly ever home. So you could kind of understand, like, gee, it'd be nice to have a 9 to 5 job,
Right.
instead of like, where am I going to sleep tonight? Well, probably Tokyo.
Exactly. A 9 to 5 can be overrated. It's nice to have the mix up of different locales, different locations, different hours, and all of that. But certainly
That's all
somebody who's
true.
doing something that's flying by the seat of their pants, literally or figuratively, longs for stability, even though stability can be a little boring. Your book is anything but boring, of course. Let me ask you this. Do you feel that Oasis 4 reflects real world hubs of trade and commerce that we see here on Earth?
Yeah, I'd have to say so. Yeah, I try to ground it in um, reality as much as possible. Mentioning freight forwarders and uh, things like that. Having been in that world myself, in the background, and why would the future in space be any different?
Yep.
That kind of commerce.
Exactly, exactly. What were the most important themes for you to explore in this book?
I don't know. I,
Bravery, courage, sacrifice,
I think
resilience,
probably honesty.
honesty.
Honesty and integrity. It's the things uh, that I value the most.
Hmm.
And there's been a few times where I've been less than integral and less than honest, and
Right.
I'm ashamed of that. But I try to be honest, and and I appreciate it when other people are.
Yep.
They show integrity and honesty. But
Yep.
I'm not perfect, and no one is. But I do appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we all do or all should at the very least. Let me ask you this. I know for the folks at home who haven't seen our interviews before, let's give them an overview of Oasis 4. I know it's a compilation of stories, but let's give them the big picture.
Well, the big picture is, again, a guy named Phil Ross, he runs a space station. And in the course of events, they discover, well, they've always known that there's been a slave trade in the galaxy. And people, corporations who are have less than stellar integrity, utilize slave labor. And of course, everybody finds that abhorrent, and they certainly do. And the different worlds get together and say, well, let's do something about this. Let's end the slave trade. Or at least a big, as much of it as we can. And they do. They go a long way toward ending the slave trade. And there's also a criminal syndicate that banks on the slave trade. And they're doing what they can to end the Galactic syndicate that exists. And these are all things that are still true on planet Earth today. We have slaves today, and they don't want to admit it, but they are out there. Mm-hmm. We have criminal syndicates that make a lot of money on the slave trade. Mm-hmm. So nothing's changed.
Yeah, exactly. When you talk about the slave trade in this galaxy, for the folks at home who haven't read your book, explain how it works, who's being served by the slaves, and why it perpetuates itself.
Well, they, as you said, the criminal syndicate, they have people that go out and gather slaves. They'll kidnap. They'll go to worlds that are that don't have quite the security that's established worlds do, like Earth. They'll go to colonies. They'll kidnap the people from cruise lines. They have like Norwegian cruise. I think I mentioned in the book, Norwegian cruise lines. They have spaceships that people go out on space cruises, and they'll get boarded by we'll call them pirates, but slave gatherers, and they'll gather stock, and just various ways of kidnapping folks, and they'll take them to. Well, there was in the book. There's one planet they built. And what we'll call it the old South, is the way they're running things. They grow a fiber that called falta. This is very similar to cotton, but they use slave labor to harvest and to grow it and so on. And they had to invade this planet, which, if you think about it, invading an entire planet would be a very difficult thing to do. But the book all goes into that. But they end the slave trade on that, or the slave practice on that planet. But there's corporations out there, particularly mining and agriculture, spread throughout the galaxy, that they use slave labor for their, for their labor. They use slaves. In fact, this book I'm working on now, two of the slaves are actually one human and one Flaston. He's but they're skilled labor. They're fabricators, welders, and machinists, and their owners use their skills to make money, repairing machines and equipment and things like that. And I ain't gonna spoil the book for you.
Exactly.
It's fun how they get it. It's fun how they escape.
Yeah, without a doubt. Let me ask you this, as a science fiction guy and a writer and a guy with a terrific imagination, we're living in an age now that is accelerating rapidly when it comes to artificial intelligence and robots. Is that going to find its way into your next novel? What are your thoughts about it as a writer? Talk to us a little bit about that.
I did mention in one short story in my first book, Bot Fight, where they mentioned, they said, well, this sounds like artificial intelligence. And I thought that was illegal to these levels. And they said, yeah, it is illegal. Of course, there's some question as to what level the artificial intelligence got up to, but it sounds, I kind of left it to where, yeah, we did wrestle with this in the past, and we set strict guidelines on how to deal with artificial intelligence. As far as androids and robots and things like that, I've played with the idea of introducing that sort of thing. And I have to give it some think.
Yeah.
I suppose.
I mean, because certainly that could replace the slave trade, right? If you had robots or androids could do it,
Absolutely, yeah, it could. And I don't want to borrow from iRobot or any of the other, even by accident. So
Right.
You have to be very careful there. I did have a story. I was thinking of writing about a fellow that inherits an old-fashioned robot, but he adds artificial intelligence to it, and it develops emotions artificially. But he enters this thing in like robot fights,
Right.
and of course, I haven't fleshed out the whole story. I don't know if I want to write that or not, but it sounds like it could be fun.
It does sound like it could be fun. I mean, that's the beauty of writing fantasy or sci-fi is you're only limited by your imagination. Things that don't exist yet could exist, and things that are existing now can be, improved upon and embellished. So I think that's great. I think we've talked about this before. Oasis 4 as a film or a TV series. Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
That'd be great. It would probably make a better like a mini series.
Mm-hmm.
The example I always come up with is Stone Cold with Tom Selleck. He had a series where he was a small town police chief, and they were like little 1 hour, maybe hour and a half movies. I can't recall.
Yep, I do.
There was like a series of 4 or 5 of them, and I thought this would be perfect for that sort of genre or that sort of format.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is a series of short stories. So fleshing out each of these stories in a standalone film or a series of connected films, I think would work well. Who would play Phil Ross?
I've mentioned before, I think Drew Carey would make a swell Phil Ross. And there's a lot of other guys out there too.
Right.
That could do it. But, when you write these characters, you kind of keep someone in mind, usually someone famous.
Yep.
What's their personality like? And this Phil Ross, Drew Carey is, he's a lot like Drew Carey, I think.
Yeah. He's a terrific person and a terrific actor and a terrific performer, Drew Carey. And I think he'd love the opportunity to play the role because, he's game show host now, and that's fun and exciting and lucrative, no doubt. But to get in there and show his acting chops a little bit in an action setting, I think he'd love that. So,
well, if he needs incentive, his wife, Alice, I always thought a red-haired version of Sandra Bullock could be perfect for that.
Yeah.
So maybe that might spur interest.
That's incentive enough. Sandra Bullock would be incentive for me, so I imagine it'd be incentive for him. So that's great. Awesome. So be sure to send a book to Drew Carey and say, hey, I think he'd be perfect for the lead character if this were adapted into a film or a series of films, because stranger things have happened, my friend. Stranger things have happened. Tell me about your career in aviation. You've worked at it your whole life, you mentioned. Tell us about your work there.
Oh, well, I started out in the Army working on helicopters, the old UH-1 Iroquois, the Hueys. And when I got out, I went to Detroit Institute of Aeronautics at Willow Run Airport. And I got my airframe and power plant ratings with a mechanic certificate. And I've worked general aviation on small airplanes like this. I've worked on some small jets in the freight industry at Willow Run. I've worked on turboprops at Willow Run for freight operations. And I taught aircraft maintenance for 13 years at Willow Run, and now I'm back to working on aircraft here at well, the name of the club is University of Michigan Flyers, but we're separate from the university. It used to be an official club of the university, and sometime back in the 70s, they said, "Well, we don't want to do that anymore." So the club members said, "Well, can we keep the name and have the carry on with the club?" And they said, "Yeah, that's fine." So now we just call ourselves Michigan Flyers. But most of our members come from the university. Usually students, a lot of aerospace students. There's a big aerospace program at the university. But we get a lot of guys from the aerospace program. They want to become airline pilots. So we've certainly created enough of those guys.
Wonderful.
And gals. A lot of I think most of our instructors now are females, and they're working on. Oh yeah, they're working on getting enough hours so that they can apply to Delta and Endeavor and those guys.
Amazing, amazing. It's a changed world, but it's good to see that equity is making its way into the aviation industry as well. When you were writing Oasis 4, was there a favorite story that you wrote, or a favorite novella, or a scene that when you wrote it, you're like, wow, that's great. It's so gripping. If so, tell us about that.
I don't know. Probably favorite scenes, at the end of the story Rescue, where Phil Ross, he goes into they go into Sparky's Tavern, and he's contemplative, and Alice looks at him. She sees something in him that she hasn't seen in a while. She's, "Are you all right?" And he goes on this big speech about how they helped right a tremendous wrong. He's really happy about being with the people he's with right now. He can't think of anybody he'd rather be with other than his kids. And he says that if I had to say how I felt right now, have to say I feel good. And I'm kind of proud of that line.
Yeah.
And there's just other little lines like that I'm kind of proud of, throughout the book.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I can see Drew Carey saying it now, which would be great. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Was this your first book that you wrote?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's my first endeavor. And it's like I said, it started out being a short story, and I just want to compile a bunch of short stories of different genres and characters, and none of them are related to each other at all. But like I said, this one is the first one I wrote, and it snowballed. I've since wrote a couple other short stories. I still want to compile that book of short stories, and I wrote a couple others that maybe someone will find them interesting. I don't know, maybe Reader's Digest. I don't know, but
yeah, exactly. If Reader's Digest even still exists, maybe it does. I don't.
yeah, my
Probably
folks
does.
get it. Yeah, my folks get it. So
Okay, good, good, good. I used to love it. I used to love it. What are those short stories about?
one of them is a group of soldiers with a Huey. They have a Huey helicopter right after the Vietnam War, and they're flying it to county fairs. They're in the 101st Airborne. They fly it to county fairs, and they display the helicopter. They happen to be at a fair in northern Indiana, and the sergeant, he's a veteran of the Vietnam War, and his one of the pilots, I remember correctly, one of the pilots asked him, "Well, who are these guys here?" He kind of laughs. He says, "Well, they're Amish." Well, what are Amish? And he explains what the Amish are, and it turns out he actually had a falling out with his parents, and he is Amish. And in fact, the fair he's at, his parents show up. He's been to that fair many times before, and his parents show up and they have a reunion there, and it's all tear jerking and great and wonderful. But it's just a little short human interest story.
Absolutely.
And the another story I wrote was that's the most fun. It's the little pint-sized crime scene investigator. There was a troubled youth is accused of stealing something in a school, and everybody's upset about it. And he's blamed for doing it because obviously it's him. He's just nothing but trouble. And this kid who's a crime scene investigator, self-styled crime scene investigator. He's at the PTA meeting and he says, "Hold it, he didn't do it." Well, who on earth did it? And he shows that he recovered the object. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil the book for you, but
Exactly.
he recovered the object, and he said, "I know exactly who." It turned out to be two teachers that were trying to cover up evidence of stupidity. We'll call it jackassery. And this kid was blamed for stealing this object, and he proved absolutely without a doubt that he didn't do it. And the whole school and the principal had to apologize to this kid, which was nice. But
they sound like great human interest stories. So I think you should try to get those published, no doubt. So good work with those as well. Let me ask you this about Oasis 4. How real or how authentic is the technology in the book?
Well, I thought having like in the opening story, Phil Ross puts in his earpiece and a translator on his belt to translate other languages so that he understands it. And the universal translator is, I forget what that, I don't think I call it universal translator. But anyway, the translator that's throughout the book. And my mom she said, "Hey, look at this. Apple just came out with an earpiece that translates for you." I said, "Well, don't they have a module on their belt?" "No, they don't." That certainly makes my books look stupid, now doesn't it?
Well, I think the AirPods will work in conjunction with the phone. So in a way, there is a unit.
And the way the module and the belt is. Okay.
Exactly. No, it's amazing. And that's what's wonderful about science fiction that you've written and others have written. It's often predictive of what will happen. If you can imagine driverless cars, if you can imagine, universal translators, if you can imagine it, somebody can design it, somebody can build it, right?
I guess that was the frustrating thing with Star Trek. A lot of stuff in the original series, it just looks ridiculous now because we've got stuff that's 10 times better than that.
Exactly.
And now, I guess when they made Star Trek Enterprise with Scott Bakula, they said the challenge was to make the stuff they have look antiquated, in comparison with the original series, but better than what we have now. And I guess that was an actual challenge, which I could understand that,
Yeah, exactly. Well, if we could teleport, that would be awesome. I mean, that's one bit of Star Trek technology that doesn't exist yet. But that'd be pretty cool if Scotty could really beam us up or beam us down, right?
I'm going to stay away from that.
Yeah, all the pieces might not come back together in the right order.
Exactly.
Right?
You might get coloring books for the rest of your life, after using that thing. That's
Exactly.
to paraphrase, I forget who was Billingville, I think, or no, it was Jeff Foxworthy. That was his joke.
That's a good line. You might get coloring books for the rest of your life after that. I think you might be right. You might be babbling. You might not be making much sense after getting teleported. Well, you've done a great job with this book, Dale. Dale Chamberlain takes us deep into the far out reaches of space. The name of the book, Oasis 4. A sequel is in the works. And it is riveting sci-fi, a riveting sci-fi adventure set on a bustling space station at a galactic crossroads. And it is a series of stories that will keep you enamored, that'll keep you turning the pages. and wanting for more. It's really good, really interesting. As James Patterson likes to say, this book's so good, the pages seem to turn themselves. So Dale, great work on this. And thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Well, thank you for having me.
Always
great
good
stuff.
having you on the show, my friend. Always a wonder and a delight talking to you, to the folks at home. I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.